I have made a little bit of an observation, and I've thought this before, but I'm not sure I've ever actually put it into words. But it's essentially the idea that we all want to kind of live up to our own personal expectation, right? So in a way, it's like, where is your bar, right? So with the gym, what's the bar? What's the bar of achievement? If you're a consistent lifter, you're getting after it, you've got goals, you've set them, you work to kind of, actually get after them and achieve them, you've got some quantitative metrics that sort of prove that, you've gotten bigger, you've gotten stronger over the last few months, whatever, you're probably living up to your bar, at least with your training, right? You've kind of set this certain expectation of your consistency and how hard you want to, actually work at it. Depending on how much you love the gym, it'll feel more or less like a chore. I think I'm on the side of the spectrum that I don't know what could have caused it, but I feel like I'm just hardwired to want to bring it. So even when, over these last 6 months, probably the hardest part isn't the training, it's just the dieting and the cardio, So since I really, wanted those results from, the diet and the prep and everything, well, it's not super crazy hard for me to say no to, giving myself a bunch of treats and like having fast food or, just pigging out essentially, and stick to my deficit, do all my cardio, and make that shit happen. Now I know that when you put it like that, it sounds like it's not that big a deal. Like, oh, dude, what are you talking about? Just don't eat, man. It's easy. But if you've dieted before, you know the challenge. So now I get a certain feeling of satisfaction knowing I did it. I gave myself this goal. I achieved the goal. I am now pivoting towards a different goal, and I'm already on track to achieve that one. I don't have the way I look at it is more so just kind of, am I headed in the right direction of what I'm aiming for? And if the answer to that is yes, well then I'm good. I'm doing what I not need to do, but what I want to do. So that's a good feeling. So what you can kind of, the way that I think about it is, you either set this bar of, your own expectation for what your end result is, or what you want it to be. So, you're saying, I'm going to do my cardio, I'm going to train, do my 6-day a week, 7-day a week split, whatever it may be. I'm going to bring it every workout. I'm really going to focus. I'm going to push it because I want to. I'm giving myself these checklists, and I'm going to check them off. No excuses, right, in a way. And then there's the kind of person where the actual act of bringing it, they've just got a little bit of they've got trouble doing it, and I'm not going to say it's easy, like, just to even add basically 2 hours a day into your schedule that's just going to the gym, because you're going to get in your car, you're going to play on your phone, you're going to drive there, you're going to park, you're going to go to the bathroom, you're going to put your shit down, you're going to talk to your buddy who you see there, maybe somebody starts talking to you, and they're kind of a chatter, so it's not like just adding 2 hours a day every day going forward is nothing, right? But you got to work up to it. So the person who's got a little more trouble with the execution, we can all come up with a plan. Anybody can look up a basic workout split and look up your maintenance calories from a maintenance calorie calculator, or watch a million training videos. Like, the actual knowledge necessary, that's not tricky to find out. That's a day of going down a YouTube rabbit hole or just talking to one of your buddies who works out. The tricky part is then, 30 minutes of cardio every day is good for me. It's going to be good for this diet. I'm going to stick to my calories, and I'm going to get shredded by July 4th, new year, new season, new me. Not exactly new year, new me. But then the execution falters, and it's shit. Ooh. You're supposed to be dieting for 4 weeks, and now you're 5 pounds heavier than you were before, because, all right, school's over, I'm going to start chilling. Oh, summertime, you start eating out, people are grilling, it's pretty easy to eat 1,000 calories worth of hot dogs. I mean, shit, I can have 1,000 calorie, just like cookout plate, and I'm gonna go back for a second one, right? I mean, food, all these extra calories and everything, it just sneaks in. So shit, I gave myself these goals, and I didn't really do anything to reach them. And now, when someone's in that position, what's a more comfortable thing to say? What's the more self-soothing, mental justification for why these goals that the guy set out for himself didn't really end up happening? Well, it's no fun to say, yeah, crap, I just slacked off. That's on me. And if you don't have to explain yourself to anyone else, like the gym is a very self-centered endeavor, not in like a selfish kind of way, but you're doing it for you and basically for nobody else. So I've said this before, the easiest person to lie to is yourself. So you gave yourself this goal in your own mind, you didn't really achieve it, nobody else knows, so you can kind of convince yourself, well shit, you know what? Dieting's just not for me. Counting calories just doesn't really work for me, bro. Yeah, cardio is probably bad for you anyway. It's you're just like you're raising your cortisol or something. Like, actually, cardio is catabolic, man. Or the guy just says, actually I'm bulking, and then completely throws the goal out the window. So it's what I'm trying to describe is two scenarios. One where somebody sets the bar wherever it may be, just a little bit higher than they're comfortable with, so that they're working towards something to progress. And then he reaches the bar. And once you've met the bar, now the only thing you can do is raise it a little higher, right? Once you go from not working out to going to the gym 3 days a week, and you went to the gym 3 days a week for the last month, hey man, 3 days a week is now where your bar is. You're good with that. Now you can raise it a little higher. 5 days a week, raise it a little higher. Cardio twice a week, raise it a little higher. Start counting your calories, just keep pushing it just a touch. Or somebody sets a bar, doesn't really get up to it, and instead of for whatever reason kind of just falls off the wagon of that hype train, and then they just drop the bar back to wherever they're at currently. So instead of moving forward and climbing, they're just going to stay wherever they're at currently. And sometimes it's a very tricky situation to discern between. Like, you can't necessarily tell if someone's really progressing in the gym just from looking at them, because you don't know what their whole day is like. So these two guys, the one who constantly raises the bar and the one who keeps his bar right where it is here, stagnant, they might look like they're doing the exact same thing. They both come to the gym, on a semi-consistent basis, or a good consistent basis. But it's what happens outside the gym where a lot of changes are going to be made. The guy who's sticking to his calories, he's just aware of the process of recovery. So he's thinking, all right, I got to get my protein in. I'm going to eat some solid carbs. I'm not going to just totally pig out on junk. Let's get some oatmeal for breakfast instead of a bowl of cereal or so. And don't get me wrong, on my next grocery trip, there's going to be some cereal involved. But my ratio of sort of treat style food to regular just plain food, I'm trying to up that ratio to like an 80-20, 80-20 or like a 90-10 or so. Because the more plain foods I eat, you just feel better. I just had if I ever have, or I don't know, I think it was a few days ago, I had a couple of Reese's cups before I went to bed, and I just woke up like, but that's not what I'm kind of getting at now. So they both show up, but one guy is present. One guy is really centered, and he's thinking, okay, you know what? I'm going to bring it. And then every set, he gets this little kind of like, all right. And then he goes crazy. Whereas the other guy might just, let's do a set. If you've ever seen somebody working out and they're having a conversation at the same time, like they're mid-set and they're still talking to the guy that they're working in with. I mean, I'm not going to say you can't multitask, but I don't, I mean, it's rare that I would think, actually, basically never would I think, okay, I want to keep listening to what this guy has to say, and I'm going to hit my set at the same time, and I'm going to keep responding to him in between reps of lateral raises. Like, I just don't see it. So, even though they both basically repeat the same day, the guy who tries to push it a little bit further, just a tiny bit, you won't even notice on a day-by-day basis, he's going to get further, right? And then we get to kind of more of a day-by-day logic of, like, do you want to wear a baggy shirt to grow into? Or do you want to grab, the schmedium that you've got in your closet, because that's going to fit you tighter, right? It's my logic has always been wearing that baggier shirt because it's kind of like this cue that I want to fill it in, So, not that everybody needs to beef up to that degree, but it's like just little things, little stuff like that. So just try to keep an eye out. The more you work out, and the more you're, even just in the gym space, like on your phone, after a while you start to see a couple of patterns. Like, it's pretty easy to see the New Year's resolutioner pattern and kind of the spring break, like, okay, summertime, and then, winter lock-in. Like, it's like our motivation is migratory, and it's seasonal, and it kind of comes in waves back and forth. So if you can be somebody who keeps their regular, I don't even want to say motivation, but just consistency up, baseline solid, you're killing it regardless of whether or not you're working out for spring break or whatever, you just got better odds, man, right? It's like I know it's not exactly like this because it obviously like fluctuates really crazy, but somebody who's only really getting hyped up for like short term, like, all right, man, we're going to spring break, let's really kill it these next 3 weeks, or the New Year's resolutioner, like that's that's like taking a short position on a stock versus the guy who just constantly does like a plain ass index fund, gradual over time, kind of just slow and steady. But that's enough of that little ramble. If you got the gist of what I was trying to say. So I did a little bit of self-reflection this morning, just getting up, moving around, and I need one more day. Legs need one more day to get to get their juices flowing. My quads are still a little tender. My hamstrings actually feel kind of fresh, but I'll give it one more day for quads. But going forward, I'm gonna have to do, or at least I think I'm gonna have to do, quads every other leg day. So essentially get my quads or hit my quads once a week, like hefty, and then hamstrings can be, both. So it'll turn into like heavy quad day, slightly lower volume hamstring day, and then the next leg day in the loop would be hamstrings only, and then really wreck them, like heavier hip hinging movements, just a bit more volume. Because when I'm really killing my quads, they just end up taking a bit longer to freaking recover. But I'm not going to do that this time. So I could have just done hamstrings only, but my quads aren't so destroyed that I want to wait until legs come back around to hit them. So we'll get a full leg day with some squats and leg press tomorrow, and I should be actually probably substantially stronger than the last leg day, not only because I've got more carbs in my system and I'm kind of recovered from the last workout, but also as much as strength is like a physical adaptation, like you're getting more muscle fibers, you can recruit them better, it's also a neurological kind of deal. So two guys of the same body weight can be vastly different in terms of force output, just because one guy can really fire every neuron or whatever because he's exposed himself to that much weight. So even just one day of one set of 315 on Smith machine squats for 10, since I haven't been pressing that heavy for a while, it should be a pretty quick change. So hopefully 3 plates feels substantially lighter tomorrow. But plan for this morning is just going to be forearms and delts, forearms and shoulders. So forearms first, shoulders will kind of be forearms are kind of going to be the star of the show, and then I'll finish with shoulders. Still just rear delts and side delts. My front delts are round enough over the front side. But I was just in Pittsburgh where you're doing a Gymshark shoot with me, Jack Eagles, and Samson Dowda. So this is one question I was asking Samson, because a lot of like basically just pro bodybuilders that I've seen, maybe not them all, but I think a substantial amount aren't really hitting their front delts too much, right? Because just from pressing in general, and not to mention the fact that your front delts are just kind of prone to growth, they get to a point where they're kind of big enough. But I think there's a little bit of change I should do in my side delt training, because when I'm standing sideways, like if I'm looking at myself in the mirror from this right side and I, give myself good posture, then I can see that my shoulders are pretty round over the backside, but they kind of slope off just a little bit in the front. So it's not that I want my front delts to be more developed, but I think there's a little pocket of space in between like full-on side delt and front delt where I want a little bit more beef. So I think I'm gonna add in a little bit more front-centric lateral raises. So usually if I'm doing a lateral raise, I'm thinking maybe bend forward just a little bit and pull backward a little bit extra so I can work my side delt and my rear delt. But I think I'm going to throw in some more, you can kind of call it like a Y raise, where instead of doing a side lateral straight to the side, I'll do it a little bit more in front of me to get a little bit more of the front side of my side delt developed, if you follow me. Not like a full-on front raise where you're doing your front delt, but just like an even mix between the two, because I want my shoulders like, freaking angular and broad, but I don't want to overpower the front side with my front delt because it's already big enough, like I want my arms to catch up in terms of my shoulders roundness. And in like a bicep flex here, my shoulder is substantially taller and rounder than my arms are, but I still want it to be big from the sides. So that's the only other change I'm going to make. But forearms, I haven't really been hitting for a while because they're kind of big enough. Or well, historically they've been big enough. But I want to see a little bit extra forearm growth, at least for the next few, probably the next few months. Throw some forearms in. Having big forearms is definitely cool. That's for sure. And I mean, I used to think like, all right, well, I don't want my forearms to overpower my upper arms. You've got to have some pretty insane forearms for that to be the case. So I don't think I'm going to run into that issue at all. I've got a few staple movements, because I'm not just doing the meat of my forearm. I also kind of hitting the backside of it too. But the basics are the basics, right? I mean, I was just saying this in the last arm day about like doing a preacher curl versus a bicep bias pull down. All your biceps really doing, if you zoom in, is this, just this bending of the elbow. Very similar with your forearm. I mean, of course, you've got the grip angle involved, but that's its own kind of training, and I'm not training for grip strength. But in terms of like the actual just mechanical motion here, not including like, finger grip ability, right? You got this and you got this. I guess you also have this and this, but I don't think that's going to grow anything substantially impressive. So I just focus on here and here, the front side and the back side. So there's a few different versions of movements you can do for either of those. So how about we stop talking about it and just jump straight into it? I'm going to do the back side first, because when I look at my arms pumped, or my forearms pumped, I want the bottom side to be like super pumped. So I'll finish with that side and kind of just start here. So let's go pop a squat and basically just grab a 15-pound dumbbell. It does not take much for these, but let's get started. All right, so forearms, very doable at home. There's not a ton of workouts where the home workout equivalent is, let's not say feasible, but let's just say enjoyable. You know, like yeah, you could do a home shoulder day, like ooh, get a gallon of water. What's a gallon of water weigh? 4 liters. 4 liters times 2.2, 10. Yeah, like a gallon of water is 10 pounds. I feel like it's heavier than that. Well, and do like shoulder raises and curls with it. Like yeah, you can jerry rig around it, but if you get, I mean, you'd only need two, a light dumbbell and a kind of heavy dumbbell, and then you'd be good. This doesn't have to be a bench. This could just be one of those freaking fold-out chairs over there. So, starting with the reverse side, right? Everybody knows this. This is kind of like classic forearm meat. But you've also got stuff back here, right? How I kind of imagine it is you're looking at the flat of a chicken wing, right? You get the top side, and then you get the bottom side. So I want my forearms to thicken up in both ways. Size-wise, you're really going to notice down here, like if you're hitting like a most muscular something or other, this is where a lot of the meat kind of ends up being. But detail-wise, having the back of your forearm developed is pretty freaking cool, right? So that's this, all this kind of fancy stuff on the top side, which essentially works to open my hand. And would this be flexor? There's a different word for these two movements. But either way, the back of your forearm is what's helping with all of this. You've also got this chunk of your forearm, which gets worked when you're doing like a hammer curl or something. I wouldn't worry about hitting this super hard specifically. Just from doing curls and rows, you're going to work this part of your forearm. I think you're better off putting a lot more energy into this bottom action and this sort of retraction action. This portion of your forearm will develop well enough on its own. And if you do like let's say you're doing a set of curls with the 40s, like okay, or whatever weight you're doing, okay, get basically to failure, I can't really do one more, and then you do a couple hammer curls as like a finisher, this part of your forearm's good. But starting here, very low stakes. So I'm going to sit to the point where my legs are pretty much flat on top, grab a 15. I mean, if you've never done this, like, do not feel bad about grabbing the 5s. Like, if I grab the 10s would be enough weight. Because this is not a strong action. These muscles are not, they have not developed, let's just say evolutionarily, to be crazy, super strong, right? If you're out in the wild, you want to be able to grab stuff freaking tight. There's never a situation, at least that I could imagine, where you had to extend your hand with a crazy amount of strength, and that was like desirable. So a really lightweight, nothing wild. Plus, if you go too heavy, it's just gonna hurt your wrists too. So ease into it. And I'm gonna sit here for like 8 sets. I'm gonna do about 15 reps on either side, just to the point where it's really kind of starting to burn, and I get halfway up and I can't really lift it any further, and that's all. So I'm going to do 8 of those back and forth, just enough to get it kind of activated. And this is not the lift to ego lift with. Like I'm serious, a lightish weight, just enough to get this kind of portion of the back of your forearm burning, and you should start to see it develop. Well, as quick as any other muscle. But I think I'll just show the one, because honestly, 8 of these would be kind of pretty freaking boring. But yeah, I'm serious, not flashy at all. Nothing hefty, just sitting here kind of burning them out. And before you know it, it's going to start to feel hard to really open your hand all the way. Because once this section of your forearm gets pumped, well, I guess you'll just have to see for yourself. But I'm going to camp out here for a while, and then I'll see you for when we switch over to the strong side. So this is all I'm going to do for the back of my forearms. This is basically my only forearm extensor movement. I can't even, apart from like using a rice bucket where you're opening and closing your hand, nothing's really going to beat this. But this action of the forearms, you got a few more movements at your disposal. So I'll do a couple more of those. But I'll just get started here, and then I'll see you for phase 2. and then just repeat that, repeat that like 7 more times. All right, I guess we already got the camera angle set up. Let's just stay here. But yeah, I mean, 8 sets. It got to the point where doing the 15s, I could only get to like 13 or so. And then my range of motion went from this to this. And then that's kind of my cue. But even just standing, maybe not visually, but I mean, I can tell looking at myself in the mirror, walking these dumbbells back and forth, just holding them, the top side over here is certainly more swollen. So yeah, I can't pull my hands back, at least with straight fingers, as substantial as I could when they're fresh. But that's kind of the more, I don't want to say boring, but repetitive part. I'll see, I haven't heard it for a while, but I used to hear people talk about how they complained that shoulder training was really repetitive. Like, oh, all I do is side laterals and rear delts, that's all. Like side laterals and reverse pec deck. As though the simplicity of the training is a negative. I'm sitting here thinking, nice, I got 8 sets of reverse curls, and I get to just sit in one spot and chill. Sweet, it's easier to do that than it is to run around and pick a few different movements. Now, sometimes more movements is better, like right here with these forearm curls. So I'm going to start with the 50s. I have done heavier, and I think this movement lends itself to, going more like as heavy as you can. But there's no point in like trying to push the envelope like, to the 150s or the 130s or something. Your forearms are super strong. That's just unnecessary though. But since I haven't done it for a while, I think I'll stick with the 50s. When I'm really strong, or when I'm in like deeper off season, I can do like the 80s and the 90s here, like pretty reasonably. And I do think it, makes the sets better. But I'll just start here. So set up as such. Bench, dumbbell, you yourself right here. So you're going back and forth, each rep or each set just basically to failure, honestly, or at least as close to it as you can kind of get. Adopt this sort of position. So your wrist and your forearm is supported, but your hand is hanging off the edge. So this is where dumbbell here, now the dumbbell is pulling my hand down and I'm fighting against it with this curling action. So it's not the most flashy movement, but this really gets your forearms going. And honestly, going a little bit lighter makes it easier to really squeeze at the top. And then it just makes it a solid set too. So I could go, with even if I sat here with the 30s, it would still be a good set. But I think 50s is a good middle ground. So let's start with a few of these. Left side first. Okay. Okay. Let's grab the 60s. I thought the 50s would be heavy enough, but I'll just go a little heavier for this next one. Yeah. Okay. All right, I lied. 2 more of those. That actually feels good too good to move on just after 3. Yeah. Okay. Okay. One more. Okay. 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 All right. Let's do a slightly more brutish version. You'll see. I don't know if I've done this in a video before. All right. So here's the setup. Sit your butt on the end of a bench or maybe a squat block. Just, something strong enough to hold your weight and some additional weight. And directly below my thighs is 1 plate on a barbell. So with forearms, what are we doing, right? This. So this is just a different version. So doing those dumbbell curls over the bench, sure, I'm all hunched over and I'm doing 1 arm at a time, but all I'm doing is this action. So that's the same thing right here, except now instead of this bent over single arm, I'm just grabbing a bar underneath me. So now it's just hung right beneath my hamstrings and I'm doing this kind of curl. So it's just like a different strength curve, like how like how a dumbbell curl is going to feel different than a preacher curl, right? The preacher curl, the bottom part is the hard part. Like, there's so much freaking extra tension down here. Whereas with the dumbbell curl, you can sit in the bottom all freaking day because the weight is just hanging through your arms like skeletal structure. So it just kind of changes it up. So with these, it's really freaking heavy at the top. Like I can do a few little baby partials at the bottom, but it feels more like I'm pulling the weight up with my forearms instead of just like, doing a forearm curl, if you kind of feel me. A little tricky, but definitely a heavy movement. I've done 2 plates here before, I think, but only 1 plate is going to be fine today, especially after those 4 sets of dumbbell curls. Whew. 2 more of those. That weight is good. Okay. Whew. 1 more. And I'll finish with a little bit of cable action. All right. Ooh. Yeah. Okay. Oh, right. Yeah, let's finish with some cables. Single arm. Well, you'll see. All right, these are certainly a staple. So since I've kind of already done two like heavy forearm curl movements, I think I'll be a little more pump focused here. But even with this movement, I think you can still go pretty freaking heavy. But my forearms are so weak now, if I go too heavy, I won't even be able to really squeeze at the bottom, which is kind of half the benefit of the cable, I think. Yeah, that'll be good. Only 50 pounds, right? Not a ton, but I'll just kind of do this little sideways angle, tuck my arm in so that it doesn't move, and then just this action. So no superset or anything fancy or like 5 rep on each side. I'll just take each side to failure. And it might be like 30 reps, but I'm cool with that because that's more so for the sake of pumping up my forearms at the end. And I've already done the lower rep hard stuff. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Okay. One more of those, then forearms are done. Yeah, last one. And I try to say this every so often, but at the squeeze flex portion of pretty much any set, if you give it a little extra focus, and instead of just doing reps real quickly, at the bottom you have a very like distinct extra oomph, like you send that signal, it's gonna add up. Like I've seen guys just sit and pump out reps on a leg curl or a leg extension or a pec deck or whatever. But if at the top of every rep, even if you're not doing a pause, you have a little extra something, there's no extra range of motion. Like when I get to the bottom, I'm at the bottom. But by putting a little more tension through my forearms, I think it adds up to a better set, a better pump, right? Better gains. So just keep that in mind. Try not to go through the motions of a set. Yeah. Okay. Ooh. All right. That's all she wrote for forearms, that's for sure. Let's do a little forearm check and then get shoulders started. All right. Yeah, there we go. So forearms are pumped. That is for freaking sure. Now, yeah, what I can really feel, because obviously you got a chest pump, your chest, you're freaking full. With an arm pump, you can't touch your shoulder. Actually, shit, just from this forearm pump, I can't touch my freaking shoulder. So I guess very nice. But yeah, this is what I'm talking about in terms of the backside, because obviously this looks like it's just the top of your forearm, but when you're actually standing in more neutral, that whole top of the forearm section with that got worked during those reverse curls, that is just out and about. So if you're grabbing a something or other dumbbell and you're looking at yourself in the mirror sideways, you're gonna see all these extra see all those little kind of fluctuations and stuff. They just kind of come out, and it makes your forearm look way cooler, right? It's like you got a bunch of like fibers and cables working in there, actually making your forearm freaking move. Not to mention just the heft benefit of having this side of your forearm thicken up. Sometimes this is a semi-common complaint about guys who think that their wrist is a little bit too slender. Doing forearms, a lot of this and a lot of this action. Sure, I mean, there's not a lot of meat in here to grow. This is mainly like just a concentration of tendon, but there's some meat in here. So the bigger that your forearms get, your wrist will kind of accommodate as well. So, yeah, I think my forearms are definitely thicker than they would be if I was like, 50 pounds lighter, because there's just a little bit of extra stuff going on in here. And then, honestly, having strong forearms, it kind of stabilizes a lot of other movements, like bench for sure. Actually being able to hold, 150-pound freaking dumbbells in a stable fashion. I mean, if your wrists are weak, I mean, they can give out. I've seen the videos, I don't know if you have, where somebody's benching, their wrist gives out, they basically drop a dumbbell in their face. It's terrible, right? So, honestly, having strong forearms is just safer, So let me try to do a little bit of a breath hold vein shot for this one, and then we can get shoulders working. Do a little bit of a blood flow manipulation trick with the sleeve. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a cool bicep vein. Super freaking prominent. But all right, forearms are done. Let's shift gears. Rear delts need a thrashing, so let's give it to them. Let's start a little bit heftier with rear delts. So 50-pound bent over laterals, right? So I'm still doing this action, but instead of standing upright, hitting my side delts, now by bending over, if I want to lift these dumbbells up, my rear delts are really doing most of the work. So this is a movement I'd say you can go pretty heavy in, because even though I put a little bit of momentum into it, it's still basically all rear delts. Just try not to turn it into a shrug, If you're doing these, and instead of just having sore rear delts by keeping your shoulder joint in the same spot and just rotating your arms around it, if you start turning it into this, well, now you're just doing a fucking, sure, you're hitting your rear delts, but you're doing like a trap shrug. If you're only aiming for rear delts, maybe err on the side of being a little bit lighter, right? Heft in moderation. But this will be good. All right. Yeah. 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 Okay. Ooh. Shit. I think just one more of those. My rear delts they feel a little tender from when I just hit back. I might actually go a little bit lighter on rear delts today. Well, let's see what we show after the second set. Yeah. 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 Okay. All right. Yeah, let's just do one more. Today's going to be 3 sets of rear delts, and that's going to be it. They're already residually cooked from some back, so there's just like a cherry on top. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's just hit some basic standing laterals next.
40s are calling my name. 30s would be a little light. 50s would be a little heavy. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, one more. Whew. Chew. Oh. Yeah. Oh. Chew. Chew. Okay. Ooh. I think that's all. Quick little 3-setter for each. Let's see how pumped we're looking. There we go. Yeah, same deal as last time. I accidentally let the camera nearly die. So let's try not to take too long to get straight to the pump check. But yeah, shoulders. It's nice having a shoulder pump. Even under a shirt, you get this extra level of broadness, which is pretty cool. I've kind of gone back and looked at a few clips of me bulked in certain shirts that I recognize that are like still in my circulation, and I'm excited to fill those shirts back up. As of late, I'm fitting into all my shirts. I want to get to, well, not even one. I'm going to get to the point in the semi-near future where I'm going to have to either restock or just simply be a little bit more specific with what clothes I end up picking to wear, just because I don't like having anything super duper freaking tight. You know, I kind of want that baggier look so that when I do have a pump check, it's like a reveal at the end. But let's see how shoulders are looking. Yeah, still a decent amount of freaking grain. Very nice. But yeah, shoulders, I'm going to work them, but they're not going to be in the regular split. They're not going to be hit with the same frequency as like my chest and legs and arms. But I'm not going to completely neglect them this off season. I do want to see a little bit of shoulder growth, but more so in terms of like visual width from the front, not necessarily like front delt growth climbing up the top. You know, like these two peaks of shoulder and bicep, I want my bicep to beat my shoulders in height. But side delts and rear delts, I want to keep cooking, because having big rounded over like capped shoulders, well, that's just freaking sweet. But yeah, nothing else to say there. A little shoulder forearm day. Let's get in the freaking car. All right, yeah, let me make sure this guy's, yeah, there we go. So before I forget, Thursday, early morning Thursday, that's going to be Thursday at 4 a.m.
Eastern Standard Time. So if you're over in Ohio or like the New York side of things, basically just Thursday in general. But Gymshark's doing their mid-season sale. So same as the, well, not exactly the same, but may as well be just as big as like the Black Friday sale, because everything's going to be up to 50% off plus an extra 10% with code SAM. So if I can give you a little recommendation, I'd recommend looking into the tactical t-shirts and some of the running club oversized shirts. There's a few, because with the running club shirts, there's like a tighter version and a baggier version. The baggier one is the one that I like the most. It's man, they're all dirty, so I can wear one today. But no, those are solid because they've still got that baggy, like drapey look, like you know when something's in a museum and they put like that silk curtain over it, like that's kind of the feeling I'm getting there. Plus, the hotter it gets, at least for me, because I'm going into an off season in the summer, you start to run into a little bit of an issue where just existing in any room that's over, or any place that's over 75 degrees Fahrenheit, you kind of just start to freaking sweat, you know. So with those really light, you know, kind of nylon-y shirts, I don't sweat so much in them. And even if I do, it kind of dries a little bit quicker. So that may not be a problem for you, but for me, that is those are kind of going to be a staple. I've actually got to kind of restock and see if we can get a couple more color waves of those. Because with the tactical shirts, it's like black, blue, off-white. If it was like black, blue, red, off-white, purple, green, that would be kind of nuts. But it takes a while to get that sort of thing through the pipeline. But yeah, those are my personal recommendations. Hoodie-wise, I guess if you're somewhere a little bit colder, then you should go for that. Yeah, check it out. But plan now is to get some food in my system, and I'm freaking hungry because the only thing I've eaten so far for breakfast was not even 3 packs. I only did 2 packs of a Quaker's instant oats, just so I can have something in my system. So I am ready to scarf down something. I'm not totally sure what, but it'll be semi-substantial. Going forward, most of my meals are going to look like about this macro kind of level. So if all my meals look like this, then I'm pretty solid. Usually 50 grams of protein per meal. I don't mind going over. If I'm really hungry and I want to do like, 10 ounces of ground beef instead of 6, and, have more like a 75 gram of protein meal, I'm cool with that. But for the most part, on average, I'm probably aiming for 50 grams of protein, 10, 20-ish grams of fats, maybe 15 per, and I think around 60 or 70 grams of carbs. Because then if I eat 5 of those meals, that's going to add up to my kind of total macro goal, which right now is just a little over 3,000. I'm not trying to push it super hard because I need to not only get used to eating that much food, but you kind of have to let your metabolism adapt to actually like properly make use of it, Like, I can't think of a perfect example. Or no, yeah, I can. It's like you got to get your engine running well and properly burning all of the fuel that gets put into it, or else it's just going to flood, Or it's, I guess that's only when you're trying to start it. But if there's not enough air getting into the system, it doesn't matter how much fuel you're putting in. It's got to be kind of this 1-to-1 sort of ratio, right? So the amount of air that I'm letting into my system to combust, which is kind of like, an approximation of what my metabolism and like daily energy expenditure is, it's got to match or at least closely relate to the amount of fuel that I'm putting in the system. Because if I put too much fuel into my system, I'm not actually going to burn it off and get the benefits from it. I'll start having some extra left over. And then, right, as you can imagine, what are you going to do with extra energy that you're consuming, at least to a point? Well, you're going to start just storing it as body fat, man. If you're 180, I guess I don't know the exact numbers. You'd have to do your macro calculations and actually weigh yourself to really know your true daily caloric intake for just maintenance. But let's say, 180-pound dude, 12% body fat. He works out 5 times a week. He does cardio He doesn't do cardio. Slacker. Well, this guy's daily caloric intake to, facilitate his training and just his regular recovery, but just to stay the same size, like he's not growing, he's not losing fat, he's just staying where he's at, maybe main gaining slightly, but really just maintenance. Let's say he's eating 2,500 calories a day. 2,500, that's his baseline. When he eats 2,500, he can train well, he's recovering well, but he's not growing. He's just staying right there. So let's pick a situation where the guy is now eating 2,900. He gets an extra 100 grams of carbs in per day consistently. Well, now he's eating that 100 grams of carbs, 400 calories over his maintenance, combined with good training and recovery. He should start to see the scale tip upward. And a lot of that gain in the beginning, I would imagine, is going to be some contractile tissue. Some of that's going to be body fat, though. I think if you're actually really leveraging your food to grow, well, you're going to store a little bit of body fat. It's just part of the deal. It's not a problem. But let's say the guy says, all right, I've been eating 2,500. You know what? Let's bulk up. Let's really bulk. 4,000 calories a day. Out of nowhere, off the rip. Like he hasn't worked his way up to that 4,000. He's just going from 2,500 straight to 4,000. He's definitely going to gain some weight, probably more weight faster than with that 100 gram of carb increase. But he's also going to pack on a pretty substantial amount of body fat, how many calories above maintenance is necessary? So, of course, I'm a big proponent for like a legitimate bulk and actually eating enough to grow. But if you're not, if you're not actually using the fuel that you're putting into your system properly, well, shit, man, what are you doing? We're not trying to, I don't even know if there's a word for fat gain like there is for hypertrophy. But if there is, there's a reason why nobody knows what it, or at least I don't know what it's called, because that's not what I'm trying to do. So it's in the sense of, actually, let me rewind just a second. As important as it is to actually eat enough to grow, right, which I definitely think it is, don't overdo it to the point where you're just packing on body fat for no reason. And that's always been my take. There is no, what's the point in getting super crazy soft? It's just, that's kind of something you're trying to mitigate in an off season. So you got to keep those two things in balance, which is a little bit of just one more angle that makes a proper bulk a little bit tricky. Because you want to eat enough, but you don't want to eat too much, or else you're just, packing on body fat for no reason. And sometimes it's hard not to eat too much because you're bulking, you can eat, you can kind of get away with it. So it's, I guess your results may vary, because if you don't have a problem dieting down, if you don't have a problem actually like limiting your calorie intake and you've got a solid, let's just say, ability to cut, well, then you can get away with putting on a little bit more body fat. Whereas, somebody who's a bit more, let's just say, they've got an aversion to dieting and they've got an aversion to cardio, well, they're going to have to be a little trickier with their weight gaining phase, because, if they don't want to get soft, then they really don't want to put on too much size or too much body fat. But I don't mind it. Fast forward a few months, I'll definitely be softer than I am right now, but within reason, where, just a 8-12 week dieting phase would kind of undo most of that. And that's just part of the deal, so I'm cool with that. But yeah, plan now is go home, get some food in my system, and then, go home, eat, get my cardio going. I almost freaking forgot. I got 30 minutes on the bike, and 30 minutes has never felt so quick. Once you get used to doing hours, 30 minutes passes by like freaking nothing, 30 minutes isn't even one episode of Invincible. And I know you're sitting on your phone watching that anyway, so why not kill two birds with one stone, right? So that's my little call to action for some cardio right freaking there. But yeah, nothing else to say. Looks like it might be a little rainy today, but that's cool. And grass is going to be greener tomorrow, that's for sure. So I'll see you for some legs.